Greetings, gents and practitioners of this craft. Welcome back to this thing of ours. I'm your host, Neil K. Marcellus. And of course, this is the Chronicles of Gameology. Now, that's checkmate. Being observant and alert as to what is happening at your six or what's behind you is a tried and true military expression that speaks to a man being vigilant to what's taking place outside his field of vision, both physically and psychologically. But from the tutelage and lessons springing forth out of the classroom and study hall of the Sidewalk University, commonly referred to on this channel as street philosophy and the concept of game, this expression is understood to mean that the unfavorable and unforeseen occurrences and events that takes place in a man's life is mainly predicated upon the fear of the many and the shadiness of a few. So the events and occurrences that can blindside a man when he fumbles and becomes negligent and unmindful on watching his own six, these events and occurrences can run the gamut, coming from different pockets of interactions that a man has with a variety of individuals, like from not realizing he has a conniving woman or even a treacherous business partner that he didn't realize from the beginning, who was in all actuality like that from the start. Now take it, those two illustrations I just got through mentioning are just small examples of a long laundry list that can remove a man from the field of play. So on this episode of the Chronicles of Gameology, I'm going to reveal exactly why this happens and how a man can up his game and level up so he can pump the brakes and stop these sort of events and occurrences from taking place. Circling back to that quote I shared with you earlier, where it said that unfavorable and unforeseen occurrences and events that takes place in a man's life happens basically because of the fear of the many and the shadiness of a few. This concept of shadiness can include activities that is commonly referred to by seasoned OGs as growing games. And this concept of growing games is like a massive book that have many chapters to it. And these chapters is different tactics. So for instance, this particular one I'm going to highlight is referred to as head games, which women play designed to bring men into compliance. So for instance, you can find this particular one playing out in a lot of relationships. So picture this. A man gets back from the grocery store and he takes the bags and places them on the counter. He says, "Hey baby, help me put away these groceries." So his girlfriend or wife comes over and starts rummaging through the bags. And then with a disdainful look upon her face, she blunts out, "Oh, I can't believe this. Where is the crunching munch? Didn't I tell you before you walked out the door to go to the store to get me another box? You know that's my favorite snack. In God's name, I can't believe you forgot it. It was such a simple task." This type of browbeating or belittlement directly towards a man from a female that a lot of men are subjective to, it stems from what that quote I shared with you earlier was speaking about when it said about the fear of the many. Let me now dive deeper into this phrase of this portion of this quote, because this is where those unfavorable and unforeseen occurrences and events I mentioned earlier sneaks up and ambushes a man when he is not aware and has become sluggish in his due diligence. Therefore, to get a thorough comprehension on why this is requires a clear and concise picture to be painted. Because, like I have said on several other podcasts of the Chronicles of Gameology, a man with clarity reaches his intended outcome and goal sooner than a man with confidence and a heavy dose of self-assurance ever does. And since we're on the topic of confidence, let me start by bringing clarity as to why on my thumbnail for this particular episode that you are currently listening to is depicting a man hiding behind, which is, in all honesty, a hindrance experienced by all men, which is a man's confidence. You see, first of all, a man's confidence is in all actuality his comfort zone. Check out this new image I'm currently showing you. Now, peep game. A man's confidence is represented by the size of his comfort zone. And one of the secrets in mastering this chessboard we call life is making sure that the size of one's comfort zone is larger than the size that contains and embodies one's unresolved fears and anxieties. And secondly, when a man doesn't expand his comfort zone, which has 4 stages that makes up his composition, as indicated on this image you are currently looking at, but when a man makes no asserted effort to expand his comfort zone, then it becomes a hindrance, something that he hides behind, which causes him to become fixated and in turn unaware, providing blind spots where unsuspected occurrences and events can sneak up on his 6, timing their approach when he is most vulnerable and ill prepared and most exposed. Still yet, before I lace you up on exactly how one goes about expanding their comfort zone, there are some brass tacks and some unanswered questions, most likely lingering on the very tip and edge of your curiosity. And that is, where exactly do these unresolved fears and agitations come from? Also, how precisely do these unresolved fears and agitations create blind spots and obstructions that I just got through mentioning? Commencing with highlighting where these fears and agitations come from, one needs to look no further than what is referred to in the philosophy of gameology as a man's shadow queen. Check out this image I'm showing you now. In view of this, a man's shadow queen is his unconscious mind, and it operates in conjunction along with his ego, his conscious thinking, as this image is now showing. And like I have said on several other episodes of the Chronicles of Gameology, referencing the unconscious mind, and that is, it has 7 levels that assembles and makes up its composition. Check out this fresh image I'm now showing. This image is illustrating those levels and dimensions I just pointed out. But a man's unresolved fears and agitations originates from this 7th level, from on this image depicting the unconscious mind. Now, a man's unresolved fears can impact and hit him at different intensities. The lowest of these intensities is experienced by an individual as trepidation. And at the highest of these intensities, an individual can experience total system shutdown, which is commonly referred to as panicking. As for how these blind spots and obstructions are created, that causes a man to be negligent in managing his 6 and allowing situations and scenarios to ambush him, to have a thorough understanding on why this is, I need to explain the different capacities that resides within a man's shadow queen, his unconscious mind, and his ego, his conscious thinking. So, peep game. According to Dr. Bruce Lipton, a renowned neurosurgeon, one's conscious capacity, their ego, can receive only 40 nerve impulses per second, while the unconscious, the shadow queen, is more like a supercomputer, processing up to 40 million nerve impulses per second. Now hold on, it gets better. The blind spots are created because of a one-size-fits-all kind of mentality that a lot of men these days are adamantly prescribed to, that has become the norm. As for encouraging men to be more efficient in getting the best out of this life we refer to as the chessboard. This one-size-fits-all type of mentality I'm speaking about is none other than the indoctrination that men should only be analytical driven, so-called logical. So check this out. Being analytical driven or so-called logical is used in conjunction with conscious thinking and an educated choice, which can be conceptualized as like a laser-focused detecting tool. By applying conscious thinking and an educated choice, we observe, analyze, dissect, and finally come up with solutions to the various problems we contend with on an everyday basis. Being analytical driven and logical, the power generated from these two factors lies in the divide and conquer method for solving problems. It is and will always be divisive. Such is also its weakness. This is where the blind spots make themselves known. Conscious thinking is used in conjunction with an educated choice. If these two, your conscious thinking, which is your ego, and your educated choice, which is also your ego, are properly developed, then they act as one unit. But because of a man's unresolved fears and agitations, this is not always the case. But being analytical driven causes one to focus on more and more details. In acquiring further details, one also begins to reduce, exclude, and ignore more of the surrounding data and information that's pertain to the subject matter that you are analyzing. Consequently, being analytical driven primarily produces blind spots by rendering certain things neither here or there and disregarding the greater scheme of things. Being analytical exclusive can be equated to your eyes being strictly focused, only seeing what lies ahead of you. But when your eyes are relaxed, how the edges of your vision kicks into motion and your field of view expands. And as a consequence, so does your comfort zone. This is referred to from a street perspective as being switched on. And being switched on is an acquired mental skill that a man is afforded because he has successfully been able to expand his comfort zone. This mind over circumstance type of ability, which is one of the intended outcomes when one attains a thorough understanding of this philosophy, which practitioners of this craft refer to as the concept of game. But being switched on or having an expanded comfort zone comes from the concept of poker, where it says in order to be successful in playing this ancient card game, a skilled practitioner will always play the individual, observing the totality of things instead of just playing the cards, being fixated and selective. Remember earlier, we discussed the downside of when a man gets too far over his skis, so to speak, and becomes exclusively analytical driven. Since a poker hand works in correlation with other factors and is not an absolute value within itself, a skilled practitioner must determine what cards the other player is holding, then take action. This requires the practitioner to be switched on and reading the full spectrum that the individual whom the skilled practitioner is competing against represents. So, for instance, from the advanced knowledge of playing the game of poker, everybody who will ever play this ancient card game will fall into 4 universal personality types. So, some individuals who will play this ancient card game will play with a sloppy and a yielding type of personality. So when a skilled practitioner pinpoints that the individual they are playing is this type of player, the more skilled player will bet and raise for value on a weak hand to capitalize on these type of individuals. Now, for those who don't know, a value bet is a strategy in poker where a more skilled and a more proficient player has more equity than their opponents because of how the opponent personality traits influence their card managing skills. This type of player who falls up under having a sloppy and yielding kind of personality, they are more likely to call, which they will match the amount that the more skilled player have just laid down, and whammo, they will lose. Therefore, being switched on, which constitutes having an expanded comfort zone, is similar in respect to the 4 profiling categories used in poker to pinpoint personality types. But being switched on also has 4 massive components that makes up its composition as well. But before I disclose those 4 massive components, which constitutes being switched on and having an expanded comfort zone, let me briefly explain why I refer to poker as an ancient card game, and why poker and the game of chess is used within the philosophy of gameology to garner further insight and knowledge into how to master this game we call life. Poker and the game of chess is both what you would call a cosmology, a blueprint and roadmap to success. To show you what I mean, let's look at a 52 standard card deck. Coded within this 52 deck of cards is the knowledge of cycles, dealing with the social dynamic and insight into human psychology. So this 52 card deck, it equates to 52 weeks within a year. Also, the 12 court cards within a deck equates to the 12 months in a year. And the 4 suits, they represent the 4 seasons within a year. And so, being switched on is all about understanding and exercising the multiple dimensions of awareness, which equips a practitioner of this craft with the ability to expand their comfort zone. Check out this brand new image I'm showing you now. Based upon the cosmology of the game of poker, the 4 suits within a deck of cards represents a 4-tier model of awareness, because each suit symbolically represents different but corresponding properties that work in association with one another. So, starting from the top left corner of this image, we have the category of awareness represented by the concept of the hearts, which deals with the concept of the presence of awareness. Going across to the top right corner of this same image, we have the category of awareness representing the concept of the clubs, which deals with the concept of the awareness of presence, which is the opposite of the first category. Now, peep game. The concept of being present deals with one having a high grade of cognitive intelligence, and the concept of being absent deals with one having a high grade of intrapersonal intelligence. As you can see from looking at the rest of this image, these 2 principles correlate with the function of one's awareness, producing this 4-tier configuration and giving a practitioner the ability to be switched on. That provides the same practitioner the capacity to expand their comfort zone, their confidence. For the sake of not turning this episode into a 15-hour YouTube video, I will be doing multiple videos dealing with the breakdown of these 4 massive concepts surrounding this mental skill of being switched on and expanding one's comfort zone. So, in conclusion, the veil, this enigma, this mystery that sits between a man's shadow queen and his ego, the obscurity of this veil is different for each man. But what is exactly the same for all men is the responsibility on bringing clarity and symmetry to these two vital contributors that determines his success or sets things into motion for his failure. Now, that's checkmate. Thanks for watching. We'll definitely catch you on the next episode.